There are places that run all night, not because someone chose to keep them open, but because they have to be. Because what happens inside them doesn't stop when the sun goes down. Hospitals are like that. The machines keep going. The halls stay lit. People come in through the night. Some of them leave, some of them don't. The footage you're about to hear described from a pediatric ward in rural Indiana was reviewed by 3 different people before anyone said what they were actually seeing or what they weren't seeing, because that's the part that doesn't make sense. Not the figure in the hall, not the timestamp, it's what was missing from every single frame. Now, put on your headphones. Drop a comment. Where are you listening from and what time is it? I always find it interesting to know who's out there. Story 1. The night I saw it, I almost didn't report it. That's what I keep coming back to. I almost just let it go. My name's Dennis. I work security at Crane County Memorial for about 11 years. Started when I was 26, quit when I was 37, and I'm only 38 now, so you can work out how long ago this was. Crane County is a small hospital, Midwest. The kind of place where everybody knows everybody, where the ER is also the urgent care because there isn't an urgent care, where the pediatric ward has 12 beds, and in a good week, maybe 4 of them are occupied. I liked the night shift. People think that's weird. Working nights in a hospital, alone with the halls, with the beeping, with the way fluorescent lights behave when there's nobody under them. But I liked it. I had a route I walked every hour, I had my coffee, I had a little desk near the main entrance where I could see all 4 monitors. It was quiet. It was mine. I need you to understand that before I tell you the rest, because the version of me that saw what I saw on that footage, that Dennis, was not a jumpy person, was not somebody who frightened easily or read too much into things. I was a guy who'd worked nights in a hospital for over a decade and never once felt like the building was anything other than a building. The call came from the pediatric ward, 3rd floor. It came from one of the nurses. Sandra, I think her name was, though she's gone now, took a job in Columbus. She called the security desk around 3:15 and said she thought she heard something in the hall. Not a sound she could name, just wrong. She said it felt like something had moved through the air wrong. I told her I'd come up and walk it with her. But before I did, I pulled up the camera feed. Standard practice. You check the monitor before you go up. The pediatric ward had 3 cameras. One at each end of the hall, one in the middle, pointing down toward the nursing station. I pulled up the middle one first, because that's the one with the best angle. And I saw someone in the hall. That's not unusual. Nurses walk those halls all night. Sometimes parents who are staying with a sick kid will get up, pace a little, get water from the machine down the hall. People move through hospitals at 3 in the morning. It happens. What stopped me was the walk. It's hard to describe without sounding like I'm being dramatic. I'm not trying to be dramatic. The figure was walking at the far end of the hall, moving away from the camera, toward the east stairwell. The walk was. The rhythm was off. Not limping, not stumbling. Just wrong. Like watching a video where the frame rate is slightly slow. Every step placed with a precision that didn't feel accidental, didn't feel human. I told myself it was a doctor, told myself they were tired. People walk weird when they're exhausted. I kept watching. The figure reached the end of the hall. There's a door there. The east stairwell door. Heavy, requires a badge swipe. Always makes a sound when it opens. This specific click and whomp that I know by feel because I'd walked through it 1,000 times. The figure reached the door and kept walking. Not through it, not with a badge, just through the space where the door was. The door didn't open, the door didn't move. The figure passed through the door as if the door wasn't there. I watched it happen. I watched it 3 times, rewinding the footage back. I went up to the floor. Sandra was at the nursing station. She looked at me the way you look at someone when you're glad they came, but also embarrassed you called. We walked the hall together, checked every room, nobody in the corridor, the east stairwell door. Sealed, locked, no record of a badge swipe in the log, which the system keeps automatically. I didn't tell her what I'd seen. I said, everything looked fine. She nodded, said she was probably tired. I went back to my desk and I watched that footage 3 more times before I filed anything. Here's the part I haven't said yet. The part I've thought about more than anything else. The hall in that ward. The lighting is overhead, fluorescent. It casts hard shadows. Every time Sandra walked through that hall on camera, she had a shadow. Every time I walked through it, shadow. When the janitor came through at 2 a.m., shadow. The figure had none, not a faint one. Not one that disappeared as they moved. None. Not at any point, not from any angle. I checked the footage from all 3 cameras. The figure walked through a lit corridor and left no shadow at all, like the light went through them, like they weren't quite solid enough to stop it. I filed a report. I noted the door anomaly. I did not note the shadow. I don't know why. I think I was afraid that if I wrote it down, something about writing it down would make it more real. A week later, I went back and pulled the footage again. Routine, I told myself. The file was there. The timestamp was there. The corridor was there. The nursing station. The lighting. The long, empty hall at 3:15 in the morning. The figure was gone from the footage. Not corrupted. Not missing. Just gone. Like it had been cut out of every frame, cleanly, without disturbing anything around it. Sandra moved to Columbus 3 months later. I handed in my notice the month after that. I still think about the walk, the way it moved, the patience in it, like it had been there before, like it knew exactly where it was going, like it had done this before, in this exact hall, and would keep doing it long after the camera stopped watching. There are more accounts like this one. Stay with me. Story 2. My sister worked NICU for 9 years before she moved to administration. She doesn't talk about the floor anymore, and I understand why. But she told me this once, maybe 2 years after she left, and I think about it every time I drive past that building. I'm going to tell it the way she told it to me, which was quiet, which was at a kitchen table at 10 at night, with both of us holding coffee we'd stopped drinking. She was the charge nurse on a night in February. Not a bad night for the unit. 2 babies, both stable, both progressing. The kind of night where you breathe a little easier, where you let yourself think about things other than the monitors. Her name is Carol, if it matters. She wanted me to leave her name out, but I think it makes it real. Her name is Carol. She was charting at the station when the camera in room 7 blinked. Not went out, not failed. Just blinked. 1 frame, maybe 2, like something had moved in front of it very quickly and then moved away. She looked up at the monitor. Room 7, 1 infant, stable, sleeping. Nothing else in the room. She went in to check. The baby was fine, sleeping the way they sleep when they're okay. That particular settled quality. Carol stood in the room for a moment, listening. The machines were normal. The temperature was normal. The room smelled the way that room always smelled. Antiseptic and something underneath it, something warmer. The specific warmth of a room that's been holding a small life. She was about to leave when she noticed the corner. NICU rooms have very specific lighting. Low, controlled, designed not to startle. The light in room 7 came from 2 sources. The monitors and the overhead strips, dimmed to about 40%. The kind of lighting that casts soft, layered shadows in the corners. The corner near the window had no shadow. She told me she stood there and looked at it for a long time before she understood what she was seeing. Not what was there, what wasn't. The corner should have been the darkest part of the room. It was, instead, lighter than it should have been, not illuminated from outside. It was February, past midnight. Nothing out that window but flat land and cold. Just light, sourceless and wrong. She went back to the station. She didn't go back into room 7 for the rest of the shift. And when I asked her why, she said, "Because I didn't want to find out if it was still there." The baby went home healthy 4 days later. Carol transferred to administration that spring. She told me she had one more reason for leaving, but she wouldn't say what it was. Last year I asked her again, and she said, "I pulled the footage from that night, from room 7, just to see." I asked what she saw. She said the corner showed up on the camera exactly the way she remembered it, that light that shouldn't have been there, that absence where the shadow should have been. She said there was something else in the footage too, something she didn't see when she was standing in the room. I asked what. She said, "Something in the corner, very still, the same height as an adult, and no shadow, not anywhere, not from any angle." She said the camera recorded it standing in that corner for 40 minutes before it left. She said it left through the wall. She said the baby was asleep the whole time. She said it wasn't looking at the monitors, it wasn't looking at the machines. She looked at me across that kitchen table and she said, it was just watching her sleep. She hasn't brought it up since. I haven't asked. Take a breath. If something in these stories has stayed with you, tell me in the comments. And if you're not subscribed yet, now is a good time. Story 3. I'm not someone who talks about this kind of thing. I want you to understand that, up front, I'm a nurse practitioner. I've worked in pediatric settings for 15 years. I deal in evidence and observation and what can be measured. If you'd asked me 5 years ago whether I believed in anything I couldn't explain, I would have given you a very polite and very firm no. That was before Harlan General. Harlan General is a small regional hospital in central Illinois. I worked there for 2 years before I transferred, and the reason I transferred, the official reason, was a better position, more advancement, closer to family. Those things were all true. They were not the whole story. The whole story starts with a kid named Marcus. Marcus was 7. He was with us for about 10 days. Respiratory complication. Nothing immediately life-threatening, but serious enough that he needed monitoring. He was a good kid. The kind of kid who asks you questions, who wants to know what every machine does, who makes the shift easier just by being himself. His mom stayed with him. His dad came after work. Normal family, normal fear. The kind of case that you know is going to turn out okay. You can feel it. Around day 4, Marcus started talking about the man who visited at night. His mom brought it up to me during a routine check, casual, a little embarrassed. She said Marcus kept telling her someone came to see him after she fell asleep. Some man who walked in and stood near the window and didn't say anything. She chalked it up to the medication, possibly dreaming, the disorientation that children get in unfamiliar places. She wasn't alarmed, just mentioning it. I told her we'd keep an eye on it. That night, I pulled up the camera for Marcus's room, watched the overnight footage on fast forward during my break. 3 a.m. The room, the sleeping child, the mother in the chair, the monitors, the window, and a figure standing near the window. I slowed the footage, watched it at normal speed. The figure was tall, standing with its back partially to the camera, not moving, just present. Standing there the way someone stands when they've settled in for a while, comfortable, patient. I watched for 11 minutes of footage. The figure did not move. And then I noticed the floor. The room had a linoleum floor. That specific pattern of pale and slightly paler that every hospital floor seems to have. Under the overhead monitors, the light picked it out clearly. Every piece of furniture cast a shadow. The bed frame, the chair where the mother slept, the IV stand, the table in the corner. All of it had shadows, the way objects do under overhead lighting. The figure had no shadow, not even a faint impression of one, like the light went around it, like it wasn't reflecting or blocking anything. Marcus's mother cast a shadow in her chair. The thing standing at the window did not. I watched for another 8 minutes, and then Marcus, still asleep, or I thought asleep. Marcus turned his head toward the window, still eyes closed, and he smiled. Not a startled smile, not a confused, half-awake smile, a comfortable one. The smile of a child who sees something familiar. The figure did not react, did not move toward him, did not move at all. I went to the charge nurse, told her there was something on the footage. She watched it, didn't say anything for a long time. We called the on-call supervisor. He watched it. None of us could explain the shadow. None of us could explain the door, because the figure had entered through a closed door on footage, the same way the footage from the corridor would later show. Doors that didn't open, space that didn't yield, and yet through. Marcus went home, healthy, on day 10. I asked his mother, carefully, framed as routine, whether he'd mentioned the man again. She said yes. She said on his last morning in the hospital, Marcus told her the man had said goodbye. She said Marcus told her the man said he wouldn't be back. She said Marcus didn't seem sad about it. He seemed satisfied, like something had been resolved. I've thought about what that means for a long time, whether it's comforting or whether it isn't. Whether the thing that stands in the dark in a sick child's room and watches them sleep without casting a shadow is there to help, or whether it's there for something else entirely. I still don't know. I don't think I want to. Story 4. My Uncle Lou worked maintenance at St. Anthony's Regional in central Indiana for 22 years. He's been retired for about 3 now. He drinks his coffee black. He watches old westerns. He goes to bed by 9. He is not the kind of man who tells stories. He told me this one the summer before last, sitting on his back porch, and he told it the way he tells everything. Flat, methodical, no performance, like he was describing a leaky pipe he'd fixed, which is part of what made it the hardest to hear. The hospital had a security upgrade in 2018. New cameras, new server, cleaner footage than they'd ever had. Better resolution, better low-light capability. The maintenance team was responsible for the physical install, mounting brackets, cable runs, that kind of thing. Uncle Lou ran the crew. They worked through the night to minimize disruption. All floors, including the 3rd floor, which is where the pediatric ward sat. Small ward, 12 beds, mostly quiet at 2 in the morning when they were running cable along the ceiling. They were working in the hall when his co-worker, a guy named Ferris, moved away years ago, stopped and said something like, "Lou, you see that?" Lou looked down the hall. Someone was walking toward them, from the far end, walking slowly, the way someone walks when they're not going anywhere specific, when they're just moving. A figure, tall, moving through the lit corridor. Lou said his first thought was, patient who got up, or a doctor on a late round. The hall was lit. The figure was visible. Nothing alarming about a person walking a hospital corridor at 2 in the morning. Then Ferris said, "Lou, it doesn't have a shadow." Lou looked at the floor, at the corridor floor under the newly installed overhead lights. They'd been testing them one section at a time as they went. The lights were on in that section. His shadow was there. Ferris's shadow was there. Their equipment cases had shadows. Their cable runs had shadows. The figure walking toward them did not. Lou said he stood very still. He said Ferris stood very still. He said the figure walked at the same pace the whole way down that corridor. Not faster, not slower, and past them. He said it felt like a cold spot moving through air that wasn't cold. He said neither of them looked back. Finished the cable run. They went down to the van. They sat in the parking lot for a while without talking, and then Ferris said, "Did the new cameras pick that up?" Lou said he didn't know. He went back inside by himself, and he checked the footage from the newly installed cameras. High definition, excellent low-light capability. The camera had recorded the whole hallway at 2:14 a.m. It showed Lou standing near his cable run. It showed Ferris standing 3 feet away. It showed a space between them where something appeared to be walking. Not a figure, just a distortion. A place in the footage where the light looked wrong, where the sharp HD image went slightly soft, like something was affecting the way the lens was reading the air. No figure. But the distortion moved the way the figure had moved, at the same pace, down the same stretch of hall. And underneath it, on that clean linoleum floor, nothing. Smooth floor, clean light, and where the distortion passed, no shadow, just the absence of one. Uncle Lou finished the install. He never went back to the 3rd floor at night. He transferred his maintenance assignments the following week and never explained why to his supervisor. He told me, "I've done a lot of night work in a lot of buildings. Hospitals, schools, offices. Buildings are buildings." He paused. He said, "That floor felt like something was borrowing it. There are more accounts like this one. Stay with me." Story 5. I've been a pediatric radiologist for 12 years. I want to be clear about something before I say anything else. I analyze images for a living. I look at things others can't see. I look for things that aren't supposed to be there, and I look for the absence of things that should be. That is literally my job, which is why I need you to understand what it meant when I couldn't explain what I saw. This was at a mid-sized regional hospital in Ohio. Not naming it, I still have colleagues there. We had a run of unusual imaging results over about a 6-week period in the fall. 5 different patients, all pediatric, all inpatient on the 3rd floor, all scanned for routine reasons. Nothing connected, nothing that should have linked them. In 3 out of the 5 scans, there was an anomaly. Not in the patient, in the room. The scans, 2 MRIs and 1 CT, caught something in the background of the images, not the primary subject, in the periphery, in the air of the room where the scan was taken. A density, an area of material that the imaging was picking up, as though there was something there, something with mass, something with a physical presence, that was not visible on the room cameras, not on any camera. We ran the scans again. The anomaly was there. We checked the equipment. We checked for artifacts. For the 1,000 technical reasons that a scan might show something spurious, we checked everything. The density was real. The imaging was reading something that was actually there. Here's what bothered me most. The density had no temperature differential. Thermal imaging showed nothing. Just a shape, a presence that the MRI was reading as having mass, as having physical existence in that room, that cast no thermal signature and appeared on no camera, and no shadow. I went back to the room cameras. I overlaid the timestamps. During the MRI sessions in question, the room cameras showed the patient, the technician, the equipment. And in the corner, In 2 of the 3 cases, a faint irregularity in the way the light hit the floor. Not a shadow, the opposite. A small space where the light seemed to bend slightly wrong, where the shadow that should have been cast by the density in the scan simply wasn't. Like whatever was there was, I don't have a medical term for this, like it was optically unattached, like the light couldn't find it. I wrote it up internally. The report went to the department head. I never heard back. Last year I ran into a former colleague at a conference. She'd moved to administration at that hospital. I asked her about the report. She said, "Which report?" I described it. She looked at me for a long moment. She said, "That was archived." I asked why. She said, "Because all 5 of those patients are doing fine. They all went home. Whatever was in the room," she stopped. She looked away. "It wasn't hurting them." She said, "We decided that was enough." I think about that a lot, whether it's enough, whether something being present without explanation, something that imaging can read but cameras can't catch, that has mass but no thermal signature, that appears in rooms where sick children sleep. Whether the absence of harm is the same as safety. I don't know. I genuinely don't know. Story 6. My daughter was admitted to Mercy Regional when she was 4. I know how that sentence sounds. I know what it makes you feel. I want you to know she's fine. She's 9 now. She's loud. She argues about everything. She's completely fine. I need you to know that before I tell you the rest of it, because the rest of it is something I've never said out loud to anyone except my husband. And when I told him, he didn't say anything for a long time, and then he said, "I believe you." And that was the right thing to say. Her name is Lily. She had a respiratory infection that turned into something worse over the course of a weekend. The kind of escalation that happens so fast you keep waiting for it to stop escalating. We were in the pediatric ward by Sunday night, room 11, end of the hall. I stayed with her every night. There was a chair that folded into something almost like a cot, and I slept in it every night with one ear always on her breathing, the way mothers do. The 3rd night, this was around 2:30 in the morning, I woke up. I don't know what woke me. No sound, no change in the room, just the feeling of having woken, the way you sometimes do in a place that isn't yours, where the wrongness of the space pulls you up out of sleep. I looked at Lily. She was sleeping. The monitors were quiet. I looked at the room, the door, the window, the 4th stand, the corner. There was someone in the corner. I want to be precise about this because I've spent 5 years trying to be precise about it. There was a shape in the corner near the window, standing, not moving. The room was dim, hospital dim, that particular low light, and the shape was darker than the room, not a shadow, more solid than that, more present. Like if you walked over there, your hand would find something. I didn't move. I lay there and looked at it. Here's the thing I keep coming back to. I was not afraid. I have tried to understand that. I am a person who is afraid of things. Dark parking lots, certain sounds at night, the specific anxiety of a sick child in a hospital room. I know what fear feels like in my body, and it wasn't there. What was there instead was something closer to the feeling of being in a room with someone who means you no harm. That particular quality of a presence that is just there, occupying space, benign. I looked at the shape in the corner for what felt like 10 minutes, maybe more. And then Lily shifted in the bed, made a small sound. The small, settling sound of a child turning in sleep. And the shape was gone, not moved, not walked out, just no longer there. The corner was just a corner. Lily improved the next morning. Her breathing cleared. The doctor said it was the medication turning the corner, the natural progression of recovery, which it probably was. But a week after we came home, I went back to the hospital. I told them I'd left something, which was a lie. I asked the unit secretary if I could speak to whoever managed the security footage. She found someone, a young guy, very helpful. I told him the room number and the date and the approximate time. He pulled it up. Room 11, 2:41 a.m. Lily sleeping, me in the chair, and in the corner, the same corner. Something the footage wasn't quite capturing right, not a figure, not clearly, but a place where the dim light of the room was doing something it shouldn't, where the shadow from the window frame went slightly wrong, where the geometry of the corner looked, for about 11 minutes, like it was holding something. The young guy squinted at the monitor. He said, "That's probably just the camera angle, the way the light hits in that corner." I nodded. I thanked him. I walked out to my car. I sat there for a while, because the thing I hadn't told him, the thing I noticed on the footage before he offered his explanation, was that the light in that corner wasn't darker where the shape would have been. It was lighter, like something had been standing there that the darkness couldn't touch. Take a breath. If something in these stories has stayed with you, tell me in the comments, and if you're not subscribed yet, now is a good time. Story 7. The thing about working night shift in a hospital is that you develop a very specific relationship with time. Not clock time, the other kind. The kind where 3 in the morning feels genuinely different from 2, where the building has a rhythm and you learn to feel when it's off. I learned that on the job, and it took maybe 2 years. By year 5, I could walk into a floor and know from the air whether something had happened or was about to. I'm telling you this so you understand that when I say something felt wrong on that floor that night, I'm not speaking loosely. I'm speaking from a decade of learned instinct. My name is Terry. I was a night shift charge nurse at a pediatric ward in southern Indiana for 11 years. I don't work there anymore. I want to talk about the footage because I was one of the people who reviewed it. I was in the room when it was pulled, and I've thought about what we saw almost every day since. The call went up through the hospital administration quietly. That's how those things work. You don't broadcast it. That the security team had flagged an anomaly on the pediatric ward cameras. 3 a.m. footage. A figure in the hall. They were asking clinical staff to review it to see if anyone could identify a patient, visitor, employee. 4 of us went to review it. 2 nurses, including me, the floor supervisor, and someone from administration whose name I don't remember. We gathered around a monitor in a back office, and the security tech pulled up the footage. The figure was there. I recognized the hall immediately. I'd walked it 10,000 times. I knew every door, every light fixture, every scuff on that floor. And I was looking at a figure, adult height, moving slowly, walking down the center of the corridor at 3:07 a.m. The first thing I noticed was the walk. Not wrong exactly, just purposeful, calm. The walk of something that knows where it is and doesn't need to hurry. The second thing I noticed was the doors. Our ward had a very specific access protocol. The stairwell doors, the medication room, the supply closet. All badge access, all logged. The patient rooms themselves had standard swing doors, always slightly ajar at night so we could hear if something changed. You had to physically push them open. They made a sound. The figure passed 4 doors in that corridor, each one. I watched it. Each one the figure just walked through, not opened, through. The doors did not move. The figure passed through the space of them and continued walking. I said, "Pause it." The tech paused it. I said, "Go back to the first door." He went back. We watched it again, slower. The door was closed. You could see the seam of it in the frame, the edge of the door against the frame. The figure reached it, and through. I looked at the floor supervisor. He was looking at the monitor. I said, "What is that?" He didn't answer. I said, "Look at the floor. Does it have a shadow?" The tech leaned in. We all leaned in. No shadow. I scanned back through every frame we'd watched. Lit corridor, overhead lights, every other object in that hall with a shadow, and this figure. This thing that was walking in those rooms that my patients were sleeping in. Without one. The administrator said, "It's a camera artifact." I said, "A camera artifact that walks." Nobody said anything. The tech played it through to the end. The figure walked the length of the hall. It paused. Briefly, maybe 3 seconds. In front of room 7. Then it continued to the end of the corridor and simply was no longer there. Not through a door, not around a corner, just the hall was empty. I went back to the floor. I walked to room 7, looked in. A 6-year-old girl, breathing fine, sleeping the way children sleep when they're getting better. I stood in the doorway of that room and I thought about the way the figure had paused there. 3 seconds. Just stopped in front of that door. She was discharged 2 days later. I don't know what it was pausing for. I've thought about whether it stopped because it was going to go in, or because it had already been in and was. I don't know. Checking something on its way out. I think about the shadow, or the absence of it. What it means for something to walk through a lit hallway and give no shadow at all. Like it exists just outside the range of normal matter, just adjacent to real. Close enough to walk the hall, not quite close enough to touch the light. Story 8. I was 12 when my brother was in the hospital. He's fine now. He was in for surgery, routine enough for a 9-year-old appendix, the kind of thing where you know it's going to be okay, but okay hasn't happened yet. And so everything is fear. I'm 29 now. I've wanted to talk about what happened the second night for 17 years, and I've never quite been able to. It's one of those things that sits in a place where you can't pick it up without disturbing something. My parents took turns staying with him. That second night was my dad's night. I was home with my mom, and I couldn't sleep, which was just the anxiety of a 12-year-old who loves his little brother. So my mom let me stay up late, and we watched TV until she fell asleep on the couch, and then I kept the TV on low, and I waited for my dad to call and tell us everything was still fine. He called around midnight. Everything was fine. My brother was sleeping. Dad was going to try to get a few hours in the chair. He called again at 4 a.m., and he sounded strange. I can hear it even now, the flatness in his voice. My dad is a man who is never flat. He's warm. He's loud. He fills rooms. The voice on the phone at 4 in the morning was careful in a way his voice is never careful, like he was choosing every word. He said everything was still fine. He said Robby was sleeping. He said, "Something came into the room tonight." I asked what he meant. He said, "Around 3, there was a man, or something that looked like a man. It came through the door." I said, "Through?" He said, "The door didn't open. I watched the door. I was awake and I watched the door and it didn't open. And then there was someone standing in the room." I was 12. I said, "Dad." He said, I know how it sounds." He said, "It stood there for a while, near the window. I didn't. I couldn't make myself move. I want you to know I'm not a person who can't move. I've never in my life not been able to move." He stopped. He said, "After a while, Robby made a sound in his sleep. Just a little sound, like he was dreaming something okay. And I looked at Robby, and when I looked back, the room was empty. I didn't say anything. He said, "In the morning, I asked the nursing staff who came into the room last night. They checked the log. Nobody came in after 11. He said, "There's something else." I waited. He said, "The whole time it was in the room. I didn't take my eyes off it for most of it. It didn't have a shadow. The room had light coming from the monitors. There should have been a shadow somewhere. I kept looking for it." He said, "There wasn't one." He said, "I don't know what it was there for. I sat there and asked myself that for an hour after it left. Was it there for Robby? Was it deciding something? Was it—" He stopped. He said, "He made a sound like he was dreaming something okay. That's what I keep thinking about, not the thing in the room, the sound Robby made, like whatever was there wasn't. It wasn't a threat. It was something else." He said, "I just don't know what." Robby came home fine. He's 31 now. He coaches Little League. He's got 2 kids of his own. My dad and I have talked about that night exactly once since then. At my grandmother's funeral, briefly, in a parking lot. He said, "You know, I've thought about it every year." I said I had too. He said, "I think whatever it was, I think it was there because Robby needed it to be there." He said, "I've decided that's enough. I'm still deciding. There are more accounts like this one. Stay with me." Story 9. I'm a hospital chaplain. I need to say that first because it changes the context of everything else. People tell me things that they don't tell doctors or nurses or family. They tell me in the middle of the night, in those hours when the ordinary defenses come down. I've sat with people in the last hours of their lives, and I've sat with parents in waiting rooms, and I've sat with children who are old enough to be scared and young enough to say it out loud. I know how people talk when they're telling the truth. I know the difference between a story someone is performing and one they're carrying. What I'm about to tell you is not something I've processed through any particular theological framework, because I'm not sure any of them apply. It is something I have observed across more than one instance, across more than one hospital in my career, and I am telling it carefully, and I mean every word. In the pediatric ward at night, there is sometimes something that walks. I don't know what it is. I want to be clear about that. I don't know, and I have resisted every urge to name it, to put it in a category, to explain it through the lens of anything I believe or don't believe. Every time I've started to reach for an explanation, I've felt the explanation bending under the weight of the actual fact, and I've let it go. What I know is this. The first time I encountered it, I was doing a late-night round at a hospital in Ohio. Pastoral care, checking in with families who were keeping vigil. The 3rd floor. I came around the corner of the corridor, and at the far end of the hall, I saw a figure. I assumed it was a staff member. I walked toward it. As I got closer, I noticed it wasn't moving, just standing in the corridor near the wall, at an angle that wasn't quite looking at anything, 40, 50 feet from me. The hall was lit. I walked closer. I was maybe 20 feet away when I noticed the floor. The light in that hall was overhead, good visibility. My shadow was behind me. The figure in the hall had no shadow, none at all. Just the clean linoleum floor and the figure standing above it like it was floating a half-inch off the surface. I stopped. The figure turned, not toward me, not exactly, more like something had shifted inside it, an orientation rather than a movement. And then it walked. That particular walk, the measured, unhurried walk that everyone who's seen it describes the same way, I know that now. It walked down the hall and stopped in front of a patient room, stood there, then went in. The door did not open. I stood in that corridor for a long time. I walked to the room eventually. I looked in. A child, sleeping, 8 years old, in for observation. breathing fine, sleeping the deep sleep of someone who is going to be all right. I asked the staff in the morning if anyone had made a room check on that child during the night. They had. Nothing unusual. I went to the security office that morning and asked about the camera footage from the corridor. The security officer pulled it up. I watched it. The hall appeared empty in the footage. No figure, no one walking. But, and this is the part he pointed out to me before I had to ask. The footage showed something he couldn't explain. The light in the hallway, at the moment I would have been watching the figure, changed. Not went out, not flickered. Just changed quality, like the air in that section of hall was doing something different with the light. Like something was affecting the way the camera was reading the space without quite appearing in it. And on the floor below the disturbance, no shadow. I've seen this 3 more times in the years since. Different hospitals, different children. Always pediatric, always night. The children have always recovered. I've sat with enough families in enough rooms to know the range of outcomes. And the children in those rooms have always, every single time, gone home. I don't know what that means. I have wanted it to be comfort, and I've stopped myself because I don't have enough certainty to offer comfort that might be wrong. Yet what I have is this. I have seen it 4 times. I have watched it enter rooms through closed doors and leave through walls. I have watched it stand at the beds of sick children. I have never seen it touch anything. I have never seen it cause harm. I have never seen it cast a shadow. I think about the children it stood over, and I think about the ones it didn't visit, and I don't know what the difference is. I don't know why it goes where it goes. I don't know what it is, though I have more theories now than I'm comfortable naming. I only know that the footage doesn't quite capture it, that the cameras see its effect, but not its form, that the light bends wrong around it, that the children sleep. Story 10. This is the last one. I've been deciding whether to tell it for a long time. I'm going to tell it once, as straight as I can, and then I'm done. My name is Ellen. I worked the 3rd floor nursing station at Whitmore County Hospital in rural Indiana for 7 years, from 2015 to 2022. Whitmore County is a small hospital, the kind that serves a wide rural area that sees everything from farming accidents to complicated births to children with conditions that should have been treated somewhere better equipped, but that family couldn't get to somewhere better equipped. The pediatric ward there had 10 beds. In 2019, there was a period, I'm going to say it was about 4 months, where the security footage from the pediatric floor became a subject of conversation among the night staff. Not in meetings, not officially, in the break room at 3 in the morning, quietly, in the way things are talked about when nobody wants to put them on record. The footage showed a figure walking the hall, not every night, but often enough, always between 2 a.m. and 4 a.m. Always the same walk. Unhurried, measured, moving from one end of the corridor to the other, pausing sometimes at specific rooms. No shadow, no doors opening. We all had theories. Staff member from another floor, some weird camera artifact that happened to repeat. Sleep deprivation, which, if you've worked nights in a hospital, you know will do extraordinary things to what you think you're seeing. We cycled through them. The theory that lasted longest, because none of us could disprove it, was that it was a patient from a previous era of the building. The hospital had been built in 1962. The pediatric ward had been on the 3rd floor since the beginning. A lot of children had been through those rooms over 60 years. A lot of children had not gone home. I don't want to say what that theory implies, because it implies things I don't know how to think about. What I know is what I saw on a Wednesday night in March of 2021. I was at the nursing station doing charting. 2:48 a.m. I can be exact because I remember looking at the clock, The corridor was empty. I'd walked it at 2:15, nothing unusual. I looked up and the figure was at the end of the hall. This is the first time I'd seen it with my own eyes, not on footage, in the actual hall, standing at the far end, 50 feet from me, under the corridor lights. I looked at the floor, reflex by then. We'd all started doing it, looking at the floor around anything unexpected. No shadow. The figure began to walk toward me. I am not someone who frightens easily. I need to say that because what happened next is something I'm still a little ashamed of. When it got to about 20 feet from the nursing station, I picked up the phone. I don't know who I was calling. I think I just needed to hold something. And it stopped. Not from the phone. I don't think it could see the phone or cared about the phone. It stopped and it turned. The same orientation shift, like a compass needle, settling. And it faced one of the patient rooms, room 6. It went through the door. The door did not open. I sat at that nursing station and did not move for 4 minutes. I timed it because I was watching the clock and couldn't stop. Then I went to room 6. A girl, 7 years old. She'd been admitted 2 days before. A rare genetic condition. The kind that the doctors talk about in careful language. The kind of language that means we don't know yet. She'd had a difficult first 2 days. The monitors had been irregular. There had been quiet conversations among staff about preparation, about talking to the family about what came next. She was sleeping. Not just sleeping. Sleeping the way sick children sleep when the crisis has passed. That particular quality of rest, the deep cellular exhale of a body that has stopped fighting so hard. I've seen it enough times to know it. I checked her monitors, normalized, significantly. I checked her chart. The numbers from the last 2 hours of monitoring showed a change that her doctor, when he came in at 6 a.m., called unexpected. He said, something shifted around 3 in the morning. I don't know what to attribute it to. She went home 20 days later. I've thought about the figure in that hall every day since, about what it was doing in that room at 2:50 a.m., about whether the change in her monitors had anything to do with the thing that went through her door, about whether it mattered, about whether I should find it comforting, about whether comfort is the right frame at all for something that walks through walls and casts no shadow and is not any kind of thing I have a name for. She went home. She's out there somewhere now, 9 years old or 10 years old, alive. I left Whitmore County in 2022. The night shifts had become something I couldn't sustain, not because I was afraid, or not only because I was afraid, but because every night I worked that floor, I found myself looking down the corridor at 3 in the morning and waiting, wondering if it would come, wondering which room it would pause at, wondering what it meant when it did, wondering most of all what it meant when it didn't, because there were children on that floor that it never visited, rooms it walked past without stopping, kids who went home fine, kids who didn't. No pattern I could find, just a figure in the hall, in the light that couldn't catch it, through doors that never opened, doing whatever it does, for whatever reason it does it. And all of us, every night, checking the floor for a shadow that was never there. You're in the dark, and you've been listening to accounts from people who do ordinary jobs in ordinary places and found something in them that had no name. Security guards and nurses and a chaplain and a mother in a fold-out chair. People who looked at footage and found what wasn't there. No shadow, no warmth, no reflection. Whatever it is that walks those wards, it doesn't announce itself. It doesn't perform. It moves the way something moves when it doesn't need you to understand it. and the children sleep. Most of them go home. What we can't answer is the part that follows you out of this. Not what it is, but why those rooms, why those nights, why those particular children. Someone else was on the floor and it kept walking. Maybe that's comfort. Maybe it isn't. Put that question down somewhere before you sleep. See if it's still waiting for you in the morning.